Greetings. My name is Michael Miller. This is a Michael Miller Pilates Facebook Live broadcast. Out to you because you're watching. Welcome. Meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, the Core New Core, and anyone interested in surviving and thriving as a Pilates instructor. 4 things today. And one a holdover from yesterday. And I know nothing about yoga. I am in no position to say anything about yoga other than the point that I make about it is that it's Eastern in nature, whereas I would attribute Pilates to being Western in nature. And you end up with different energy in the body in the pursuit of those practices that I think are distinct in that, where they come from as a chosen attitude of oneself and one's participation in the world. And see, I hear the whole Eastern realm of things talk about self, what's self? Which is my point, right? So, the one thing I'm not sure I mentioned in the Facebook broadcast that I do think I mentioned here in YouTube is that at the end of the Pilates mat class goes in a very organized fashion from lying down to standing up. And for wherever you start in yoga, a lot of my experience in it has been with Savasana at the end, where you lie down and, it's a dead body pose. You're relaxed, right? Which energetically is different and by design in both cases, There's nothing wrong with seeing something that's discernible. As a matter of fact, it helps you understand what is if you have something else to compare it to. It's thousands of years old compared to the relatively new, way new and may transmogrifies into minutia. But maybe not. And so recognizing as a Pilates instructor that you're going from lying down through a conditioning effort that's sequential and progressive and flowing, all of those things, and getting to the end of the push-up, which is the opposite of where you started, and energetically, fiercely connected to the observing capacity, actually ideally, right, that you are that much more completely coordinated, or that much more coordinated, maybe not completely, in your capacities of being, thinking, and observing. So, in the MMP point of view, doing Pilates is a willful act. It's a Western-minded approach to an act. It's for good or for bad. It's just the heritage of it is different than the heritage of something else. And you could say it's all about an attitude. Not only the attitude of your body in space, and then moving that body in space through space, and the attitude that it assumes in that movement. But it's also the attitude up here that one clings to or tries to reinforce to best embrace the challenge of moving the biology through space. The body, that's biology, and it's in space, and that's physics. So how the body accomplishes the physics is evolutionary. And I would point out, of course, I think that I've identified the presence of coronary tension in the body between axes of rotation, oppositional tension between axes of rotation. That's my definition. I give it to you as my definition so that you can use it and say, that's Michael Miller's definition of coronary tension. And to view it, you can just acknowledge the line that goes through your arms and see that there's rotation there. And then you can point through the ears and see that there's rotation there. And set up your cueing to make oppositional rotation between axes, especially when you pull away from the unwanted kiss to line up the axis through the ears over the axis with the shoulders. A lot of times students have taken that to an extreme and made fun of it, but to me that they're aware of it at all and can ultimately find the sensation of the tension that we're talking about. So that takes me to number 2. I saw an ad for something on Facebook that took me to somewhere that showed me what I called chair, so like a low chair or a high chair, but the chair, sitting in front of it with legs wide, pushing down on the pedal with one arm while lifting the other. And I shared it because it was a good example of control. And even with so much on the web, there's so little of what it's possible to look like or what real control can mean in the action of doing the movement. So I shared it because of the movement. And I comment on it now as well. Go see it for the control. But where would you take that as a Pilates instructor? That student has great control. And where would I ever go with that? As an MMP savvy instructor and knowing about endpoints of tension, you can always introduce unlocking the knee and engaging in an endpoint of tension at the metatarsals, because that's distinctively MMP. And where does that come from? Joe's statement that contrology develops the body uniformly, and if you really want to go to uniform engagement, to get uniform usage, to get the uniform development, it takes developing uniformly to get uniform development. And to develop uniformly, you end up aware of and engaging in coronary tension, because that's the body reaching for that shape for a lot of reasons that have to do with physics and math. But the coronary spiral, the Euler curve, I grew up calling him Euler, but it's Euler, I guess. Fresnel made an integral of the equation that expresses its shape. And to me, it's identifying the oppositional rotation between axes that is a comprehension, meaning you get it in your head and you get it from your sensation. So from this point of view, that's how the body does its thing to get uniform engagement in order to, why? Distribute the load of the body most efficiently so that you're not straining any part of the body in the movement. So if you make a crimp in the hose of the uniform engagement through the trunk, and then hopefully don't just end up in a clench at the extremities. So that's where I would take that. I definitely honor the control and the effort. And then knowing what from my perspective, my two big valuable things are CT and MMP. And she has a lot of control going on there, and that almost implicitly means her capacities of body, being, thinking, and observing are all coordinated in that effort. Just in the effort, you can see that. But then in the means of the engagement, going into CT and saying, okay, I want you to try a different way. And I know it's opposite of what Joe's word-for-word instructions are in the manual, his book about locked knees and pointed toes. But after you can do it with locked knees and pointed toes, here's where it goes. I like that. That's a good expression. Here's where it goes. And why does it go there? It goes there because Pilates isn't dance. It's about control. Control, right? And control, in the pursuit of Pilates in a Pilates way, is contrology develops the body uniformly. So it's the uniformly developing part that takes you to Cornu and takes you out of locked knees and pointed toes, which can be considered totally classical, and it seems very much influenced by the major sphere in which Pilates grew, which was the dance world. Joe wasn't dumb. You know, he was a mechanic, and he opened a mechanic shop right next to a race car. Right? If ever I were to open a studio. So, knees and metatarsals. Uniform engagement. Uniformly developing. And see, the great thing is, it's all sensational. That's why Michael Miller Pilates makes sense. It makes sense as the saying mark. Maybe it should be Pilates makes sense as the saying mark, but you can feel the difference. And so all I'm trying to do is point out two ways of engaging your body, and it's up to you to at least be able to discern if there is a difference at all. Number 3. Control is still the issue. Perhaps control is always the issue, right? Contrology is what Joe named his method, and that's like the study of control, okay? And he defined it, of course, and you've heard that, and you know that, and you can say that word for word with confidence. And you know where Joe's definition segues into the MMP point of view. So in any language, and regardless of intellect that may be behind it or beneath it or part of it, the movement itself is definitive because there's control there, and the control seems to be pervasive because of that uniform engagement thing, and probably that connection to breathing thing. So, number 4, the poem of Joseph Pilates. From the MMP point of view, the mat sequence in Joe's book, Return to Life Through Contrology, is his defining statement about his method. Where did I go there? Oh, because the bulk of it is the sequence of exercises. And when you consider the character of a poem, concise, abstract, ideal, refined, pure, essential, all of those words that you would attribute to a poem, you can attribute to the movements of Joe's choreography, each of the exercises. So, as words in a poem, right? And so, I've watched many people bravely go off to take the poem in a different direction, or say it differently, or rearrange the words, or add new words, or very few people take out the original words. And yet many do. I say very few, and yet many do for reasons of what the human being is capable of embracing. Right? There's a whole world of instruction to get a person ready for doing the 100. And that means you may do other exercises or facsimiles of them or whatever, but the poem is the poem, and it is a poem because of its cohesion and expression. Cohesion and expression. And that was the great 2 words to end on, talking about the poem of Joseph Pilates. Honored that I could, honored that you got to listen. I hope it resonates with you, and I wish you well, because life can't live forever. Read between the lines, see behind the curtain, add 2 and 2, direct your thinking. That's a tough one. We ought to talk about that sometime. Direct your thinking, and Geist.